Hello guys, welcome again to Netcode-Hub channel. How do you implement custom authentication in Blazor WebAssembly? So when you have a web application and you want to protect your APIs, how are we going to do it? In this video, we are going to have a look today. Let's say you have a web application whereby the user needs to register. After passing in the username and password, would you like to save the password just like that in the database? No, you don't, or you won't do that because it is a plain text and people can see it. So what you can do here is you have to convert this password into password hash such that it is not readable. It has been encrypted. How can you do that? You can do that by using a random numbers and a password sort, and we're going to have a look today. We're going to first create a Blazor WebAssembly and create just a simple form for our registration. Then we're going to add an API whereby we're going to demand the data from the user from the client section, and I encrypt the data or the password, and I'll insert to the database and I give the person feedback. Maybe registration successfully created. Let's have a look. So we do that by first creating our Blazor WebAssembly project. But let me do this. If you know this is the first time of visiting this channel or watching a video from this channel, then we have a lot of goodies for you. Check the playlist. We have a lot of projects and single lessons for both Blazor WebAssembly and also Blazor Server app, .NET MAUI and mobile, or .NET MAUI mobile and desktop application too. We have a lot of projects and also lessons over there. So check the playlist and now you're going to find them. They're waiting for you. Also, if you found this video helpful, please give me thumbs up. You do that, it pushes this video for a lot of people to view as well. And also, if you have any issue, don't forget to put it at the comment section over there. Alright, so let's move on by first creating our project. So I'll have my Visual Studio 2022 launch, and I'm going to create a first Blazor WebAssembly project by clicking on the File, New, Project, and I'm going to choose Blazor WebAssembly. Also, when we are done with this project, I'm going to leave it to the GitHub and I'll put a link in the description. So you can just go in there and I'll clone it and also for review it for maybe another purpose or even modify it to suit how you want it. So let's create a Blazor WebAssembly. And now here, I'm going to say that I'm going to give it a name. Yeah, so I have a long name. When you read, you understand. Demo registration encryption using random numbers and sort. And that's going to be the password sort. So when you go to the repo, you're going to see this long name over there. You can just clone it. Now let's click on next to create this project. You know, we have the location where the project is going to be, and that is where it is. Look at the C, a folder called projects. The next thing, when you click on the next, you see we have the framework, and we want to use 7.0, the target framework. And now here, we want to configure for HTTPS, and we're going to use the co-hosted, because when you use the co-hosted, we're going to have the library, we're going to have the client section, we're going to have the API. We're going to add the API ourselves. So let's leave that one out, and now let's click on configure for HTTPS. So click on create, and now we wait for this project to get created. So while this project has now created, we're going to install some packages, and now we have to install 3 packages. So that is the anti-framework call, .SQL server, and also .tools. These 3 packages will enable us to create a database, perform migration as well. So let's get going. I have these packages over here. So I have this SQL server and also the anti-framework code over here. So I'm just going to copy this. Then I'll just have to download them. So if you know, I'll just add them to the project reference. But if you know how to do it, then go to dependencies and click on manage NuGet packages, and I'll do that. So I'm going to just unload this first. All right, so project reference, and I'm going to paste this here. Okay, so I will save this. But for now, since this is not the API, I don't think there's a necessary for us to add this. So here we're not going to add that because I forgot this is not the API. So let's do it. So here we're not going to install anything unless we're done. So reload the dependencies. And now when you run this application, I think it's going to work normally as the Blazor WebAssembly project. Let's try that and see. Alright, so you can see that our page is now successfully created and it has been launched on the screen, as you can see, beautifully done. So what you have to do here is we are going to convert one of these tabs here or these buttons as a registration button. As soon as you click on that, you want to navigate to the registration page. So let's use one of these here, or we can actually have a button here to register and we can now link it over here. So let's get to that. Now we go to Solution Explorer, and where we have that's going to be our layout. So go to shared folder, and you can see we have the main layout. On top of this main layout, there is a button that we have. So we're not going to do anything to this. We're not going to touch it. Let's grab it and make a copy of this, and we're going to put it first. And now here we're going to say register. So that is it. So register, and you want to clear all this because as soon as you click on register, you want to go to register page. Alright, so this is where we want to go as soon as we click on that registration. Okay, so with this registration, let's see what we have here. It's saying potential, fix it, remove this. Okay, so let's see. Alright, it is set. So when you save this, there is the output that you see. You must have a registration button on top here, and that is what you're going to work on. So let's first quickly create you must see that. Let's create a Razor component. So right click on the same shared folder. Let's add a new Razor component, and the name is registration. So we're going to choose Razor component, and now here we're going to say registration. So on top of this, we have to set the route, and that's where you're going to navigate to as soon as you click on it. So we say add page. Then you're going to have registration. That is it. Now in here, let's define our simple code for registration. So we're going to use div, and now here in the class, we'll make it as row. So let's finish that. And now in here, we're going to have our card. And now on in here, the card, you want to use maybe something like H3. And we can put this in the middle. So let's have a class and text center and font weight bold, maybe text. So you want to have maybe text color. So text primary. Now let's have the card body. So down here, you're going to have our div, and I'm going to have our class. So, and let's have div class, and that is going to be card footer. So in here, let's add a button. Now the class here is going to be BTN. So let's have outline danger for registration. And I'm going to say So click to register. So that's going to be the button name, and we have our button class here. So we can also set this to float end. Okay, so now we have this beautiful button, and now let's go for our form. So we're going to have our div, and now here you want to first have our edit form. Now, before we do our edit form, let's create a model here, and that's how we're going to handle our data. So right click on this, let's add a folder here as model. Let's stop debugging so we can have access to the renaming section, and let's do that. So models, and now with these models we have to create one model in it, and this model is going to be registration. So registration model. Let's create it well. Okay, so in this you want to have maybe a name. So you want to have, let's have an email address, email, and let's have string, password, let's have another one for confirm password, and this one's going to be confirm password. And now maybe you can have one for name. Okay, so we have this. Now this is our model, and that's what we're going to use here. So in here, let's create in this registration model, a registration result page. Let's create it here. So we're going to say that. So public registration model. Then we say this is a model equal to new registration model. So with this control period, let's inject the namespace. Control period, let's use that. So we can have this model, and now let's go to the edit form. It requires a model, so we pass in that model. Okay, now there's also unvalid submit. Then we can talk about handle submit. So down here we can also create a method like that. So let's say public async task, and then we say handle submit. All right, so the next thing to do here is let's create our form in it. So we're going to have our div, and now this is a class. So we're going to have input group. So this input group, you want to have first a label, and now this label for attribute. So for here it is for model dot, and here we can have name. Let's see. So let's use for, and now this for is going to be name. Okay, now let's type in full name, and now let's have our text box. So input text. Now you can have an ID of name, and now you can have a bind value, and we say that model dot, and you must have name in here. So we have name, and now here you're going to have class as form control. Okay, now with this, let's have a class as label, let's see, do we have form label? Okay, so we have form label. All right, so now we have this, and also let's go for validation as well. So for validation, we have to add this where we have this edit form on top here. Let's add data annotation, and also we can add validations summary on top here. We can put it on the last line. Now in here, we can specify style in it, and then we can say that let's have test color. So let's specify only color as well. So color, and now we say this is red. That is all that you want to do. Or red is to white. Let's have Indiana red. So color, you want to have Indiana red. Okay. Now the next thing that we want to do after this is we have to add the validation to this form here. So let's come to the next line. Now let's use validation message. Now for it's going to be a method. So we call this method init. Now we point it to model dot, and that is for name. Okay, so we have this. Now let's copy this. Control KD, format it well. And now this for name. So this is for email. We have this for password, and then we have confirm password. So let's make a change here. So confirm, and now this is going to be for email. We change the same thing to this. Now we change the ID to the ID of the label. And now here we can say this is email address. We do the same thing to this as password. You can copy this, and now we paste this here. The ID, paste it, and now here too, and now that. Now the last one here is confirm password. So you see we have confirm password. You can paste this, and now attach the confirm to it. So confirm password. So let's grab this, and now here let's bind them together, and now let's put it here as well. And now in here we have dot confirm password, the same, and that is it. Now here we have to change the type here as password. So let's see, to do that, we can't have access to this. We don't have type. So type, we don't have any type over here. So how do we set this to password? And we can't set this to is password too. We don't have that. So what we can do here is we go to the model that we're going to use here, and I have to specify them here. So first of all, let's have the required attribute. So this is required, and now that's for full name. You can set the minimal length and the maximum. But you know what, we're going to do that. You can do that yourself. So let's set just a required attribute here. And now also we want to check this is password. So here you want to check data type. And now we specify this data type, not this data type. So data type dot, and I can have password. And now let's do same. So we can actually grab this, and now we paste this on top of this password too. And now also here we have to set the compare. So we say compare, and now compare to what? This password. So that is what we are doing here. Now this password shouldn't be null. So let's see. Now once we've done this, we have a form here created. Now let's have a button. Now this button here, we're going to have a type at submit. So type is equal to submit. Now let's save this, and now let's run this application and see what we have now. So here, before you even submit, let's test it. All right, so let's click on this register. and now we go to the route of registration. Now let's see, there's nothing found here. Let's check the route well. So registration, you can just copy this, and let's go back again to the main layout. Now let's paste this here, save that, and now let's check it out again. So now refreshed. Click on this again, and now we are in. But as you can see from here, it is not neatly done at all. As you can see, we have, so let's try to set up in a proper way. So let's go to our page, and now where we have this registration page, so let's come here, and now here instead of the input, let's make it as forms. So let's grab this, and now let's paste them here. Okay, so let's set the margin top to maybe 3 or 2 for each. So here we can set this empty to 2. Let's grab this for margin top. Now you paste it over here to for all. Now with this footer, for the footer, we can leave it just like that, or we can decide to also set the same. All right, so let's refresh that. So let's click on the button. Now we are in. Okay, so as soon as I click to register, let's see what happens. You can see nothing happens here because you want to perform the validation, but you can see from here nothing happens. Although this is required, but as you can see, nothing happens. Now let's check it over here. Now when we go to our page, you can see we have this site, and now we have the validation message, we have the validation summary over here. Okay, we have this valid submit method. Now we have this method here to call for that. Now when you go to this model, let's check the model. So we have this is required, this is required. Okay, so let's come in here, and now let's set validation summary. Let's give it a model. So let's set it as model. Okay, so you provide the value to that. Now that saving this, let's try to refresh this and see what we have now. Now let's go to the models class. You can see from here email, so we can specify this as also email address. So it's also part, that's an email address. And now here we can make, you can see here it is required already, so we need not to provide this string as well. Or if you like that, we can decide to set this as required. So we can also add this keyword, means that all of this needs to be provided before we can move on. Yeah, so we can set them as required. Okay, so let's check it up. Now from here, click on this register, and now if I click on this button, nothing happened because I haven't entered anything and it's not going. But you can see if I decide to type in something, and now I click away, passing something here, click away, now nothing happens. But as soon as I delete it, see, you can see you have this name field is required. And now as soon as I type in this and I remove the mouse, you can see, let's see what's going to tell us. This field is also required. You can see the email is not working yet because we have to refresh it. So let's do that and see. So we save this, and now let's stop this, refresh it. All right, so we have an error here. Let's check it up. So this requires to initialize in the constructor. Okay, because of that required attribute that is stated over here, so we can take off this required. Okay, so we can make this as nullable to stop these errors. All right, now let's save. Let's run it again. So click register, and I click on this. So let's see. So I decide to clear that off. I have this required, and you can see now the image is not valid. As soon as I clear that one too, it changes. Okay, so you can see we have the validation is working perfectly over here. You can see password did not match, and this also required. So if I click on this, nothing happens. Let's refresh this again, and that is what we are working on. You can see here it's not working. So let's check that. Now in here, this is what we are checking. So we're going to say that if we can use model, if model is null, then you want to return. So nothing going to happen. As soon as we click this, nothing will happen because we are returning when the model is null. Okay, but if it is not null, then what do you have to do? We have to now create an API to hold that. And as we do that, we have to create a service here. So let's create a service to work on that. I click on this and I'll click on add. Let's create a folder here. Before that, let's stop. So the service is going to be user service and also user service for the implementation. So let's do that. So this has to inherit from our user service. We can create constructor for this. Okay. Now let's go to the user service, the interface. And now in here, let's create a task. And now this task here is going to return something like a message. So maybe bool. So you can have success. And now string message. Okay, and now we can say that here. Let's see if we put this, then we can say that here it is register user, and now this register user must come in with register user model. So register or registration model. Control period. Let's see, using these dot models. Okay, so you have these models used, and now you can create an object out of this. Okay. So let's go to our register user class, and now in here, let's generate interface. So we have this. So in here, we are going to create our service here. So we're going to say that let's inject our HTTP client here. So create an assigned field. So in here, we're going to say that results, you know, this is going to come in with, let's see, so bool success. So we're going to have success is equal to, and now we can have in an await, we call our HTTP client, then dot. Okay, so here dot get async or post async, because you're going to register. So post async, and I'm going to pass in the route of the API as, so maybe API, and that is a user, and also we pass in the model. So here, what is the model here? And that is this registration model. So let's copy this, and now we paste this here, and that's all. Okay, so first of all, let's store the results here because you don't know what is going to come out. So var user is equal to this. Then maybe we can now check. So if user dot success. Okay, so you can check the success over here. or we can now get something from the async. So let's check. We can do something like, so var response is equal to, you're going to have an await, then user dot, okay, content dot read a string async. Then we can now have access to this. But for now, let's paste, or let's send this for registration. Then at the end of the day, we have to return. So let's say return true for this. Okay, so we're going to return true. So we're going to return this success true right here, and now the message true as well. So let's put it. All right, so let's return something like now response. So we're going to have response. Okay, so let's say response dot. Now here it is, we are reading a string, so currently we can't select that. Okay, so this is what you're going to do. Let's return, let's remove this here. And now since it has to return just a string, you want to return just string. So if it is success or not, so you want to return just a string here. So let's remove this. And now just, it is a string message. So response.toString, let's convert it to toString, and that will be all. Okay, so we have this method here. Now the next thing that we're going to do is, let's check the method signature. Let's do it well from this angle. Okay, so the error here must be off. Okay, now let's create our API. So let's go to, I'm going to close all this. Now you can see we have our project working. So let's, our API, we're going to talk about, or we're going to create a new project to this. So right click on this to the solution. And now let's add a new project. Now this project is going to be web API. So ASP Netcode web API. If you don't know where it is, click on this and I'll go for web API. This is for F#. Choose C#. And now here we're going to have our demo registration and encryption using random here. So I'm going to grab this. Then I'm going to paste it here and now add in .api. So next, we choose firmware version of 7.0 and now we use controller, click on create. So in here we have to create, install some packages, and that is what I did earlier on. So let's copy these two packages and I'll go back to this Explorer. So we have this API. Let me open this. Here is the API. So I'm going to unload it and I'll paste this here. Save that and I reload this API again with dependencies, and that is it. So I'm going to run this API to see. So API is going to be selected, save that, and now let's click on this run button to run it. Alright, so while it is running, if you don't know how to install them, right click on dependencies and I can go to manage NuGet packages and I can search for this Microsoft.NT framework call, SQL Server, and also the SQL tool. So you have to install tool as well. Let me see if I have it in my library. So do I have tools here? Okay, so we're going to install tools when it is done building. Alright, so you can see this is the API and it is working now. Okay, so now let's stop that and install the tools. So dependencies, right click and I go to manage NuGet packages. And now here you're going to install tools. So you have this entity.tools. Okay, so let's install this. Apply, accept. All right, and that's all. So we have it done. You can now close that. So when we go to Solution Explorer and when we check our client section, you can see we created a model here, and that's a registration model. So you can just click on this, and now we need the same thing over here. So we're going to copy this, and now we can, after that, let's see if this is installed. Let's see the tools. So let's check it over here. API. Okay, so install, accept it, and we have an issue here. Let's check the output. Warning, detected package downgraded. So let's package dependencies. Now manage NuGet packages updates. So let's try to update all. Okay, so no package. Alright, so I think problem solved now. Now you can just close this and let's create a model. So in here, we have to create a model for that. So let's go to the same project. Let's close this. Now let's expand that. And now in here, let's create a model. So add new folder. And now here to create models. So right click on this and now add new class. And now here we say registration model. So we can paste this in here. And that is what we copied earlier on from this. So it's going to be, you have to get an ID. So this is ID. And also we have to have string name. Then we have email address. We have password and confirm password. So string, we have password, and the last one is string, and it is confirm password. So confirm password. Yeah, so these are the properties that we created earlier on in the first project. That's the client one. Now once you have this, let's create a DB contest class first. So we do that by creating a folder here, a new folder, and I rename it as data. So inside this data, let's create a DB contest class. So add a class, and that is app DB contest. Now this class has to inherit from DB contest. So DB contest class. And now let's create a constructor for this. And now here let's pass in this class. So let's create a database table, and here going to be DB set, and you pass in this registration model. And now we say this is users. Okay, so now we have this. Let's create our, go to app settings.json, and now let's create our connection string. So you can put it on top here. And now here we say this is connection strings. And now we give it a name as default connection. And now with this, you can specify server. You can set server as local. That's for local host. And also either initial catalog or database. So we say users DB. Then we have trusted connection. Trusted underscore connection. We set this to true. And now trust server certificate. Set this also to true. Alright. So now done with this, let's go to program.cs and then let's register this here. So builder.services.add scope, and now here we're going to use add db context class. So control using this, so add db context class, and now in here we can specify options which marks to options.use SQL server. So this has to be in this first, then we can specify options.use SQL server. Let's see, so options dot use SQL server. Now control period, let's check it out PNT. So use SQL server. Then with this, let's see if introduce. Now you have to check it to us. So builder.services.add scope appdb contest. Okay, so here supposed to be add db contest. So builder.services.add db contest. Then options marks to option.use SQL server or SQL entity framework call. Then here we can now get the file name in our app.setting.json file. So builder.configuration.get connection string .get connection string, and now you pass in the name as default connection. And in case that connection is not found, you want to throw new invalid operation exception. And now maybe we can say that database connection string, and we say default connection is not found. You close that, and that is it. Now when we are done, let's also save that. Now when we go to this service, a user service, you can see we created, that is the user service here, but I did not register that. So let's go to, before you forget, we go to program.cs file, that is for the client section. And now in here, let's do that. So we say builder.services.add scope, and now it is user service. Then we have this user service too. Good, so we do that before you forget. Now let's close that. And now in this program too, we are going to create the same repository here. So let's close this. Now in here, let's create a repository, and I right click on this. Let's add a folder here. So this folder is going to be repositories. And now let's create an interface and implementation class in this as well. So this is an interface, and now there's going to be iUser repository. So iUser repo, and now the class is going to be user repo. So let's add a class, and this class is going to be user repo. This has to inherit from this, as you know already. So let's do that. We can generate constructor for this, and now in here, inside the repo, this is what you're going to do. You want to create a method for registration. So in here, you can have something like tags. Then let's have our properties specified here. So let's say we can talk about is user registered. So is user registered. Okay, and also we can have string message. So if user is registered, then let's give a message. Now this, you can do like register user Okay, so let's have an async because you know it's a method that we are adding this. And now in here, we have to add a DTO because we use this as an entity and we want to add something to it. But for now, let's use the same thing. So in here, let's use the model that we created. And that is a user registration model. So let's grab this and let's go to the repo and let's pass it here. So control period, we can inject the namespace of this. We have this method created. Let's go to the interface and our control period, let's implement interface. So whilst we are in here, that's where we're going to start all the work. That's for the encryption of the password. So first of all, what you have to do here is let's include our appdb context. So appdb context, let's control period create an assigned field. So after doing that, we want to check first if the user exists in the database. So we can say var user, and I can see this is coming in with it's supposed to be a boolean, right? So let's check, it could be true or false. So user is equal to, then we can have access to appdb context.user, then you can have .any. So this any, you can specify, let's use a discard. So this marks to this dot. You're not going to use the ID, rather I want to check the email. So this dot email is equal to registration.email. Yeah, so you want to check this. Now with this, you know, at times the email could be uppercase, so let's convert all this to lower, or we can just use ignore case, so to lower. So email.to, let's say we have it here, email max 2 .email.to, so .to lower. Now let's check this up, where this is coming from. So let's see .any. Now let's use just an expression here. So u.email.toLower is equal to registration.email.toLower. It seems you are missing something here. Let's find out. So it is saying that there is no argument given that correspond to required parameter destination of these memory extensions to lower. Okay, so let's check it up here. Now we are getting the whole appdb context. You must have an await. Nothing, problem solved now. So var is equal to await appdb context. Now here must be an async as well. Okay, now let's see. So it is saying we should change this method signature. So let's convert this to toString before. So .toString. Then you can have access to .toLower, I believe. Okay, so let's do same to this. So email.toString.toLower. So we are now checking registration.toString. And you can see we have .toLower. And now what is it saying again? So can I convert this get await? All right, so it means we have to remove that. All right, so once we have this, we can now go to check the next thing to see if it is found. So we're going to say if user, meaning if it is found, then we want to return something like, the first thing is going to be false. Then you have to have a message. So maybe email already exists. You can do that. Okay. Else. So else, then here, let's convert the user password into hash before we can now save into our database. So we're going to create a private method to handle that. And now this private method is going to return a string here. So we say hash password. And now it's going to come in with a password. So this is password. So let's create a byte of salt. And I will assign this to new byte of salt. And now here we want to use 16 bytes. Aside from that, let's use using. So var. Now you want to check this random number or random generator. So random generator. So it's equal to, then you can have random number generator, and that is this one. And now with this random number, you want to talk about create new generator to generate new number for us. And I can see random number generator is equal to get bytes. So let's have this get bytes. And now get bytes, you're going to pass in the sorts. So with this, by having this sort, we are creating this random number generator over here. And we are setting this random generator to the byte of this. So control period, let's see if. So in our method, we are referring to this as a dependent. So aside from that, what you do is we have to inject this appdb context. So after injecting this, we have to create constructor for this, and I inject this appdb context. So now we initialize it, and now it is working now. Now it is up to us for us to implement the interface in here. Now to implement the interface, we have to implement it over here, and that is the implement, or that's a method that we created in the interface here. Aside from that, we have to now get the data from the database. So we want to first check if the user exists. So if it exists, we want to return user email already exists. But in case it is not, then we are going to create a new user model. Remember that the model coming here comprised of the name, email, and password. You want to create, because these are the things that you want to store. So you want to have access to name, email, and password. But this password, we want to hash this password. We want to convert it into hash, because you don't want to store a normal password inside database. So how do we do that? We have to, after converting this password, then we are going to now save it into a database, and I return this as account successfully created. And I return true, because you know that the signature for this method, you need to return a bool over here and also a message. After doing that, it means you have to create a method to handle this hash password. Now we do that by creating its method over here, as the signature implies here. It is coming with a string, and after that we have to create a byte and generate random numbers here. After generating random numbers, we create an LFC drive byte, and by passing our sort and also the iteration type and the name of the algorithm that you want to use as SHA1. After that, you get our byte to 20. Then the next thing here is we're going to create a hash password hash as 36 bytes. So the first one you're going to create from 16. That is to copy the sort from 16. The whole thing byte is 36. So from 0 up to 16, then you're going to copy the next 21 as an RFC password hash. We copied it over here. So now once we have these two copied, we want to convert into base 64 this password hash by adding the sort and the random number generated. So these are the things that you want to do. After that, you have to return this successfully created to the user. All right, so this is what we have to do for this controller, or from this interface that we have created. Now the next thing to do here is we are going to create our controller and inject this interface or this service in it and try to use that. So let's save this. And the next thing that we have to do here is you can see that from here we are adding name, email, and password. We don't want to use confirm password. So meaning when we come to this model, confirm password must be ripped off, because confirm password, it is there for the client to confirm his password. When it comes to the API, we don't need any confirmed password. So let's take that one off, and I can see we are not having any issue anymore. All right, so let's see now. To create our controller, let's right click on this controllers folder, and now let's create a controller as user controller. So class, and now here is going to be user controller. Before that, you must go for add controller, and now let's wait an API empty one. We're going to name this as user controller. So user controller, and it's, as you can see, it is an API controller with empty one. So in here we have to create constructor for this. So in here we inject constructor by creating and injecting our user repo, then we pass in that. So we initialize our repo over here. Aside from that, you can see here is an post method because we want to register. So after that, we create an action result because you're not going to return any model, so it's an action result. We pass in a registration model, we create an object out of it, and now here we're going to check. We call the service from this repo, and that is the register user async. We pass in this model, and now we check if the results here it is true. We want to return this. Okay, meaning if the results here is success, you want to return this. That is when it is true. But in case it is not, then what I do, we're going to add that error to this model error state, and I return a bad request and return this to the user. So that is what we actually doing over here. Very simple thing. Now, once you have this, what you have to do here is you have to run this project and see. Remember that we've registered this in the program.cs file already, so we can now run this application and see. So while it is we're about to run, let's check our program.cs file, and let's see if our service has been registered here. It is not, so let's do that. So we can do that by initializing builder.services and .add scope, then we pass in our repo and our method. All right, so now we can now go ahead and run this. So we have an error here, and it's saying that package downgraded. So unless I update this package again. All right, so you can see our page is now loaded, and now when you click on user, we are going to post it. So we're going to add name, email, and password. So let's see. Now the email here, let's see it here, it's giving us 0 here, but let's check it up. And I'll see from this registration model, email. Okay, so this email is supposed to be string over here. All right. So with that, let's do it again. Because we haven't performed any database migration yet. So although we have an API open, but there is no migration, and I'm afraid this is not going to work. So let's see what we can do from this area. Let's first check if our model is connected. We have installed this package .tools, so let's check it up. We have tools over here. So now let's go in there and perform migration. If not, let's try this and see what happens. If I click on user, now I have this, try this out, and if I click on execute, from here I'm going to have an error, and that's going to be that database is not found. So let's wait to see. Yeah, so object, and it might be that the database here won't be found at all. Yeah, that is this. So let's create that. Now let's go into tools, and I go to NuGet package manager, and I go to manager console, and now in here let's add migration. So add dash migration, and we say it's initials. So -o, that is data, create a folder called migrations, and I put everything in it. So yeah, stop. Now we are building this again, so let's wait for it to get built. Okay, build failed. Let's see. So it is the API selected, and now let's build it ourselves and see. So this is our project. Right click, build. Succeeded. So let's try this again. So still failed. let's say .NET build. Alright, so I tried to build and I can see we have failed. It is expecting this, and yeah, so let's close it. Alright, and I think it is solved now. Now this interface, let's check. So here's supposed to be tags, no public async. So let's clear that. Alright, and I think it is solved now. So we can now peacefully perform our migration. So let's clear this, then add migration. Let's do that. So you can see it is succeeded. Now it's going to run a query over here to create a database for us as it is done. So now let's update. So update database. Alright, so it is done now. So let's run the application. So when we go to our client section, you can see that from the client section we have our service. So let's first test this user service too and see. So try this out. We assume this is a user and email. Let's execute that. Now let's see the response here. Okay, so it's saying that you have this object.toString field. So let's check that from our service, and that's the user repo. So in here, so this in is giving us, so let's check, let's use so dot where, then the user max to user dot email dot to lower dot equals to this model coming in dot email dot to lower, and here you're going to find dot first or default async. So here must be an await, and now we check if user is not equal to null, then you want to return this. So where that's got first or default, let's see where we have this error here. We have this and that. Alright, so the default async now solved. So now let's do it again. So user, try this out, and now let's try to execute this. Alright, so you can see here successfully created. Alright, now when we check our database, you're going to see this encryption. So let's check our database and see. So you can see when we check the database, you can see we have the encryption over here, and that is the password that the user types in. So this is the password, and it has been encrypted. Okay, so now let's go in there and do it from the application. So in here, if you check our user service, we are returning this. So we have to create a response model here in our user service. So in our client section, let's create a model as a service response. So add a class, and now this class is going to be a response. And now this response, let's have a bool for success and also a message string. So we have a success and we have a message. So let's go back to the user service, and now in here we are going to replace this response. We're going to get it from the API, because you know the API is returning, when you check our user repo, it is returning a bool and a string message. So that's what you have to also receive from here. So you know in here we have to return, that is a read from JSON async, and then this response that we've created. Aside from that, we have to return this response. So wherever that we have to get this response. So let's copy this, and now let's go back to this user, our user service, and now here instead of this string we have to paste this here to make sure they sync. Okay, so aside from that, what else can we do again? We go back to our registration page, Now let's check our service. So pages are shared, and you can see with the shared, you can see we have our registration page. Now in here, we're going to call a service. So let's first inject this service on top here. So here we do inject, then our user service. Then you have to create an object that is user service. So now let's come down here, and here let's create it. So let's call the method in this user service. So in here we have to call results is equal to this user service dot register user, and we pass in this model. Now let's inject navigation system over here so we can navigate to as soon as the registration is through to log in. Okay. So we inject navigation manager, and that is it. You create an object out of this, and now we come down here, and now we say that if this results here dot success. So if result of success here is true, then we want to say navigation manager dot navigate you. Let's make it home page. Okay, then let's say home page. Else, then we want to return. That is, if it is not successfully done, then you want to return, and we want to display the message, the information to the user. So let's do that. Let's also go in there and inject IJS runtime. So let's inject that on top here. So we also inject it as this IJS runtime and JS. Now let's count down here. So if it is this, they want to do that. Else, so let's put this in the quotes. So we want to have else. Then let's clear this up. And now here we can call await. So await, then js.invoke void async. We call an alert and display the message. Okay, so one method that we need to do here is to enable calls. We have two separate projects. We have the client and the API. So we have to enable calls in the API for us to have access to the client's content and also post data. So that's what you're doing here. You come back to the program.cs file. That is for the API. And now here we add this. So I did this offline, and I'm going to show you over here. So builder.services.add calls, we pass in this option, and our options.add policy, we give it any name at all. Then policy.with origin, we specify the route of the client section, and that is the port over here. And also you make sure you do not add any / here, and allow any header and allow any method. So when you are done, then you have to pass in this middleware pipeline, that is an app.use calls, and I'm passing the name that you specify in here. So this is what you need to do. So Ctrl+KD, formatted to all. Now save that. When you are done, the next thing to do here is you go back to the program.cs file for the client section, and I will do the same thing over there. So this is for the client, so I'm just going to open this, and I'll go to program.cs file. And now in here, you can see we have the base address is equal to new URI. Now copy and paste the URL for the API. And that is it. Now let's save that. And what you have to do here is, when we call this method, when in this user service, we are now returning a response over here. The response comprises of the username and also the that is a success message, and also a flag over here. So this response, we have to also create same response inside the server, so we can use it over there. So we don't have any error in there. So now let's copy this, and now let's go back to the API. And now in here, where you have these models, let's right click and add new. So I'll stop this first. So let's add new model, and that's going to be a class. And now we say this is response. So this response model, and now we paste the same thing that we have. We paste it over here too, so that we can return it over there. Now in here, let's go back to our user service, and now here in the repository, you can see you have this user repository. So instead of using this thanks bool and also stuffs, let's can just remove this and now just pass in the response. Very simple. And now let's copy this also. We go back to the interface and I pass in same. So that's the implementation. And now we have to remove everything from here and I replace this. So what is this now here? If this user is null, not equal to null, then you want to return. So instead of this, we want to return a new response. So new response. Then we put this in the bracket like success equal to false. And now here is going to be message equal to. Then you have to close this. Okay. So this is what you are returning. We do same to this. So we can now go in there and now grab this. So let's grab that. Now here's supposed to be. So we grab this one and now here we can just paste this and now cut this message and replace the message here. Set this success to true. Now let's clear this. Okay. And that is all that we are doing here. So let's save that. Now when we go back to the Solution Explorer, when you check the controller here, the user controller, we have to return an answer here. So here shouldn't be action service, rather supposed to be this response that we are coming in. So this response, and that is what we are sending. Also this, if this, you're gonna have dot. Now you have success over there, and that is it. And also in the user repo, we have to add this. You see we've created a new model, so we have to return the response as well, and we set access to true and then this is the message state. Okay, so for now let's save everything and let's run this application again. So let's try to register a new user, and I'm going to use the old one that we used already, and let's see if that one is going to work. So click to register. We wait for some more time, and I can see here we have email already exists. Let's create a new user here. So let's add one to this, let's add one to that. Click on register, and I can see it is registered. So when we check the code here, let's check our database. Users folder, I click on this and then let's view data, and we must have the new user added. So let's see. So you see you have a new user as test1 added, and if you check the email and on the password, you can see it is now encrypted. Okay, so that is it for this video. You've seen how to encrypt password, and we've seen how to encrypt password. And also one thing that I want to talk about here is when you check our page, you see when trying to create an account here, our passwords is just a plain text. So let's just solve the problem, and that'll be all. So we go back to the client section, and now let's go to the shared. We have registration.razor, and you have, when you check our models over here, we have this registration model. Specify this as password. So let's click on the register, and now here let's test the password. You can see that it is now masked, and you can now view it over here. Okay, so now that we are done with the registration, the next thing that we're going to talk about here is to integrate the login system. So in this, we have to have our link created or added to the layout. And also we have to create or design our login page and have our service that's comprised of the interface and implementation created. So let's get into that. Now let's close all this. Then let's add a link. So we go to main layout.razor, and that is where we have to add. So we have the register here, and we want to add the login as well. So we create space, and now we paste the login that we have here, and that is the login there. So now we have to go in there and create this Razor component. So let's go to Solution Explorer. Now here we go back to the same shared folder. Now let's add a new Razor component, and we're going to choose for a Razor component, and now the name is going to be login. So now we are in, we have to specify the routes here. So we can now have this page, and now that is a login. So now we can now go in there and design this login form. Now, this is what we're going to do. Let's go to the register, and now you can just grab the form from this. So let's grab this form. Then let's go to the login, and now here, you can just paste it here. And now we just log into your account. So log into an account, and now we're going to have a method also. So, we have a method over here. So you can just go in there and then grab the same method. So there's a method. Let's grab this. So with login, we have our code, and now let's paste this. Okay. So meaning that we have to create our login model, which comprises of the email and also the password, because that's what you want to use. So let's get going. Let's create a model. And this, you are working in the server. That is an API. So that's the client section. So we go to the models, and now let's add a new class. And that is login model. So in here, we're going to have our email, and also we're going to have our password too. So we have these two properties, and that's what we're going to use in the login page. So let's go to the login page, and now here we're going to change this to the login. So here we say login model, and we have this model equal to new login model, control period. Now let's include the header. That's for the namespace. Handle submit, and we can now make a check here. And we have to create a service to register to handle the login. And aside from that, we have to inject this navigation manager, and maybe you can navigate to the home page. Okay, so let's see. We go back to the registration page, and now we can just grab this, and I can add this service as well. So let's grab this, and let's go back to login, and on top here, let's paste them. So what you have to do here is now you have a model here. This is our method. Now what left again to do is to implement this password. So here model, we have model.email. So let's make this as email, and now let's change this to email address. Okay, now here is going to be the same email, so you can just copy this and paste it. And now here is going to be password, so let's clear this. And we have password and a button. Okay, so we have email and password, and that's what we are doing here. Now on top of this, let's specify the attribute from this login model. So on top here, we're going to specify as email address. So we have to create a model, that is what the login model, and now we have our attribute as email address and required attribute against this email, and now we have the same thing for data type as password against this password attribute. Now when we check our login.razor, it seems we have to call a service known as login user. So we have to create a service here. So let's go back to a service. And now that's a service interface here. So we open that and we have to add this login service. So we can just copy this and I'll make a duplicate of this. And we can change the names over here. Alright, so with this, we can make a change. We can change this to login user. And also we can change this to login model. That is a parameter coming in. And with its object, we can just make it as login. Alright, so we have this login model. So let's go to the implementation and now have this implemented. So we can write the definition for this method. Now control period, let's implement the interface here. And that's where we need to write our logic for this login. Alright, so in this, we can make a copy of this register model or register method and I'll paste it over there. So in here, we just have to clear this and I'll make a copy of this and I'll paste it here. Now we need to make some changes to this. Now the first change to make here is to turn this as an async, and that is what we are doing here. Aside from that, the next thing is to also set the route to login. So we add this as an action method. So we specify this with the attribute, that's a verb. And also we have to change this to login model because that is what we are using here. Okay, so that is what we need to do. Now let's save that and let's go to our API and try to create a method, action method, which has the same route as this. So Solution Explorer, we go to our API and inside this controller, we go for the user controller. And now here we have to create a method here and that's going to be post. So let's start. So in here, let's first have our HTTP method. Now we need to specify the route in it. So we do that by specifying the route as login. And that is the route over here. Aside from that, what you need to do here is to create our action method. And now this action method, we have to set or change the register user to login user. You have to also change the model coming in from register model to login model. We also make a change to its object as well. Okay, so now we have this. Let's go in there and create this login model. Now remember that we have created one over here. So let's can just go in there and grab this model. That's for username and password. And we go back to this Solution Explorer here. Now inside our API, let's create a model to the models folder. So add new class, and this is going to be login model. So with this login model, let's paste what we copied in here, and we can now remove this data type from it. So this is a login model, and when you come to this controller, you see it is already included as a namespace. Okay, so we can now open and work in the body space here. So before we move on to this, we are going to authenticate this user. We're going to generate JWT token so that it can be sent to the user, and also add claims as well. So for doing this, we have to specify our token settings in the app.setting.json by passing the token settings and these are the properties that are going to have. We want to have the secret key, also the issuer and the audience. So for this secret key, we can use any key at all, but you want to get a generated string key from the internet. So let's switch to our browser and I'll try to get a string key for this. So let's switch to our browser and now here we're going to have to navigate to random.org and let's see if we can have access to random strings. And now, so as you can see from here, let's see if we can have access to random numbers or random strings. So this is, let's specify /string to it. Okay, so you want to the string from 10 to, let's make it as 20. And now let's include upper and lowercase, and I get this string. So we have this string. You can just copy one over here. And now let's go to our settings here, and in the app setting.json, let's specify this here. So here we're going to specify the JSON token settings here. So in here, we are going to specify 3 things. The first one is a secret key. Now, secret key is what's going to be used to generate the token. We're going to have an issuer, and the issuer here is the server generating the token, and that's the API. And the audience is the application which is going to consume the token, and that's our client Blazor. So let's start here. So we can do that, put comma over here, and now we can specify our token settings here. And now here we need to specify some parameters or some properties here. The first one is a secret key. We need to also specify the issuer, and now we need to specify the audience. Now remember that when we go to our page here, you can see we have this, so we can just go in there, copy the first key, and let's paste it here. So let's go to our application, and now where we have the secret key, let's paste this. Let's go in there and also copy another one. And let's also attend to our application and now add it. So you can see we have this string here as 20. So it's 20 strings over here, 10, 10, so that is 20. So here the issuer is our API. So let's go to the settings and I'll try to grab the local host or that's the address. So program.cs, you can see we have this address here, and now this we are referring to the API. This is the API, so this address here is referring to the Blazor. So we copy this as the client. So instead of adding this HTTPS, we can just grab this local host and now the port only. So let's copy this. Let's go back to the app settings, and now here that is the audience. So we paste it here. Also, we do the same thing to the issuer. That's an API. So we go back to the audience, and that is the client. And client, you can see we have this program.cs. We have the API over here. So we can also grab this API. So let's go to the app settings, and I will paste it to the issuer. All right, so we are done with this. But in order to use this, we can actually create a model to handle this. Okay, so to create a model is very simple. Let's go to Solution Explorer, and now we are creating this model. So let's add a folder, and now we can add this folder to any of these to the same model. So let's put it model, and now this is the API. So let's work in the API. So this is the model, and now right click and add a new class. Now the class name must be the same as the name settings here. So you're going to be token settings. So token settings, and we have to specify the name as we did in the tokens from the app settings. So you have to get the same name: secret key, issuer, and audience. So let's specify them here. Okay, so in here, let's specify the string key, and also specify the issuer, and we specify the audience. So we make sure that the names or the properties here, they sync with what we have in the settings, that's the app settings.json file here. So let's go to the register, that's the program.cs file in the API, and let's try to add or sync this module that we created with the one that we have in the app settings, and that's the configuration file. So the API program.cs file, and now in here, let's specify it. Yeah, here will be okay. So in here, you must have our builder.services.configure token settings, and we have to pass in builder.configuration because you want to have access to the file from the settings. So we can grab the sessions and the name of this token settings. Now you see we have 2 token settings here. There is the model, and now there is the configuration name, or that is the data found in the app settings.json. So we try to match them in this program.cs file. We do that over here. So now we are done with our service. Let's go to the API and also create a service there. So there's an API. Then we navigate to the repository. So the interface, we have to create a service here, and that's a repository to handle the login system. So in here, we have our task response, login, user async, and we pass in this login model and also this model. Let's go to the implementation class and implement it over there. So that's a user repo. Now control period, let's inject the interface. So we have that here. Alright, so here let's make a check. So first, what we're going to do here is we are going to check if this model equal to null, then maybe we can decide to return a new response of this. So bad request. That is when this model is coming, it is null. If it is not, then we want to get data. I want to get the specific user email from the database, from this user table. And now we are converting this email to lowercase so we can compare them by using the keyword as equal to. If the user is null, it means user is not found. Then what do you have to do? We're going to return the same response, and I will say invalid email or password because the user is not found, the email is not found. But in case the email is found, then what you're going to do, then you're going to create a private method to compare the password. Because you know, in the registration, we encrypted the password to base64 string. Because when you check here, you will see we are returning to base64 string. And now when we check a database 2, as soon as we open or as soon as the person registers, the password is converted to base64 string. So in order to compare, we have to reconvert or decrypt it into the normal plain text so we can have access to the text or the message, or that's the password. So let's try to open the database table, and that's going to be under tables. So user table, and now let's say if a person registers, let's see the output here. You can see it is converted into base64 string. So to do that, you have to convert this or decrypt this so we can compare the plain text. So inside our user repo, let's try to get it here by creating a separate method to handle that. So maybe you can decide to close this. Then let's create this method down here. So as I speak, you know that this user here comprises of, as soon as the email is correct, you're going to have the access to the person's password and now the email address. Okay, so now if you get the user data, what I'm going to do, let's first compare the password. But as I said, you know, we have to convert this password. So we create this method, and now this method, the name, you're going to return bool, that is true or false. And now we are saying that verify user password. We're going to pass in the raw password, that's the plain text password that user just pass in into this login module, and also the database password that is stored from this user. Now, when we have this, you want to create byte, and you want to convert the raw password, that is a database password here, to base64 string. So we are converting it from base64 string because you know it is converted to as soon as registration is done. And now, so here to compare, we have to reconvert it from base64 string, and that's what we are doing here. We store it as db password hash. Aside from that, we're going to create sort of 16 because you know we are creating sort of 16 characters, and that's what we're using to encrypt this. Now we're going to create the same sort of 16 characters, and now from having this byte, we are going to copy the byte from the password hash because you know the password hash comprises of 36 characters. 16 for the sort, and now 20 for the real password. So we create 16 bytes, and now we're going to copy this. This is the base, that's the database password, or the DB password over here. And now we want to start from the index of 0. We want to copy this. We want to skip this sort. This is the sort 16 over here. So copy this 16, this sort 16, start from the index of 0, and now count up to 16. So you're going to grab that sort from the database or the password. Now, when you grab that sort, it means that we have the one left is the password. That's the 20 characters. In such case, what I'm going to do, we want to convert this password, that's the raw password coming in here, into RFC password. That is what we did to convert this into a password hash in the registration. So you do that, we pass in the sort, and also we talk about the iteration, the number of standards you generate to get us the password or the hash, and also the system that you want to use, the algorithm is that SHA-1. Aside from that, we are going to get a byte that is a 20 byte. So we take up the first 20 sorts, a 16 sort, the rest here it is a 20 byte. Okay, so after doing this, then we have to now compare. So we're going to use the for loop to loop through this. Now we are looping through the current count of this password hash. This is the RFC, the current database or current raw password encrypted. Using this RFC byte, we're going to count it. Now, you know, this database password comprises of the sort and the password itself. So we want to skip the sort and now check the password if they correspond to the one that we have in the database. So that's how you can see we have int I equals 0. Now I is less than, and there's an RC password.length. This RC password is the one that we encrypted for the current or the raw password. So we are checking from we want to check the length, and now after checking the length, we want to compare. This is a DB password hash, and now we are getting the I plus 16. So if this initially I is 0, that we want to start from the 16th, so from 17 to 1. Now it's going to be 17, 18, 19 to get to the 36. And now here you want to compare to this RFC password and see if the 17th I is equal to the first one. So if it is, then you want to return true. But in case it is not, because you want to return false, then else you want to return true. So when this method returns true, it means that the password converted into the RFC base or byte converted also compared to the one that we have in the database do match. So it means the user has provided the correct password and then the correct username. So in this, so we have to call this method into this login async method here. So let's come to our main method here, and that is a login user async. So down here we can now check. We can create a variable for the type here. It is bool, and we want to say do passwords match. So the login password and the one from the database, do they match? You pass in this the login model password. That is the current password the user pass in. And now there is the database password. Do they match? So if they do not match, so that's why we are using this exclamation mark. If they do not match, then we want to return invalid password and success equal to false. But in case they do match, then what are you going to do? Then we have to create a method to generate the token for us, and that's going to be the JWT token. But before that, let's inject the security settings model that we created. Let's inject it into the context because that's what we're going to be using to generate the token. So in here, we are going to inject it here from this private read only, that's the token settings model that we've created. We have to also pass it into this constructor here. And I'm going to use this I options and pass in this token settings, and we have an object here. And you can see we have to initialize it by using this to initialize the token settings here. So as I speak, we can now have access to the security key, the audience, and now the issuer as well. Now let's return to our component, and that's the method, and try to create in a JWT token for the user. So let's create a variable here. As you can see, that's a JWT access token, and we have the generate JWT token, and we're going to pass in these parameters from the user because we want to have user ID, username, and also user email. Also, so let's create this method. Now, this is a method that we've created over here, generate JWT token, because we have the ID, the parameter specified in here. And now in that, the first thing that we have to do here is we're going to create a security or symmetric security key. So we can do that by using the test token setting.security key that we perform, or we specify that in the app.json. Also, aside from that, we have to create our credentials, and we're going to use this security key that we've created. And I'm going to use the security algorithm of HMAC-SH256. After doing that, we have to create a list of claims because the user coming in here, we want to assign if they're just a user, if it's administrator, if it's a manager, or any other claims or any other roles that you want to add. Here, you have to create a list of it so we can add them. Also, the next thing to do here, we're going to add a claim. So the first thing is you're adding the user ID, and you're converting this integer here to a string, and I will store it. The next thing is we want to add the full name and also the email address. Because when we check our registration model, you can see we are performing or we are adding only these three properties here. So when we check this register model, you can see from here that you have just ID, name, email. We don't want to add a password. So we want to grab only this first three. Now we go back in here, and the next thing to do is we are going to specify, we're going to create a security token. So with this, we're going to specify some few properties here comprising of the issuer, the audience, the credentials, and also the expiring date, and etc. So let's do that. So here, the first thing to do is we have to specify the token, that's the issuer. So we're getting the token settings, getting the issuer, and that's the API. Also, you want to get the audience, and that's the Blazor. We pass it in there. And the expire date, since we are doing this for a practical purpose, we want to expire after 20 seconds. So you can see we can add days, you can add months, you can add seconds as well, and minutes. Now let's also specify our signing credentials, and that's what we did over here. And the last one is we specify our claims. So these are the claims that you want to add. Okay, these are the claims. Aside from that, the next thing to do here is we have to return this token handler by writing this to token, and we return it over here. So when we call this method, we can return a string, and that is what we are storing over here. So the next thing to do here is we want to create a model that can handle this token in and out. So let's go to our models and I'll create a nice model for that. We go to our Solution Explorer, and now in there we go to this model, right click on it, and now let's click on Add New Class. And now with this, we want to say it is JWT token. So this, let's add a handler too. Now in here, we want to specify only one attribute property, and that's going to be the string token access. So let's have a property of string, and now this is going to be access token. So you can make this as nullable. And now once you are done with this, the next thing to do here is we have to create a service so we can pass in this token to the registration, right? Because you want to send, as soon as you go for register, you want to return this access token as well. So let's try to set that in. So we go to this user repo, and now in here you can see we are having this method. Let's go to the interface, and that's the interface here. Let's specify something. So instead of using this response, we rather want to clear this, and I want to use something like, so bool. Let's specify it in a method first. Okay, so in here we can do that. Okay, or one thing that we can also do here is instead of specifying this response here, we can just add the token to this response. Okay, so let's also clear this, and let's maintain what we have in there already. So that's going to be the response. So this response, and now let's go to the response. So with this JWT token, we can just grab this, we can just cut this, and let's go to the response here, models response, and let's paste this response. So this is our response. Now let's go in there and let's clear this JWT token from this response. So let's clear this. So we still have the same thing. Now when we check our user repo here, so we have this, and now it is returning a response, whereby this response comprising of the success message, also the flag, and we have the token specified in. So that's what we need to return. So in here, let's return a new response. And on this response, we have to specify these parameters, and now we have to set this access token to what we have here. After setting this, we can set this success to true because now token has been generated, and I can just set this message to any message at all. Let's say success is okay. So we have to specify our token over here, and as you can see, we have our access token, and we have this access as true, and we have this message as success. Now after doing this, we have to specify or create our controller action method, and we can now call this login async method that we have created in our repo. And now remember that when creating this, if you check this user service, we specify the route here as API user and now login. So that's what you need to do inside this user controller. So that is this, and let's specify it. As you can see, we have the route in here. So we're going to now call this method, and I'm going to just return it. As you know, it is returning a response here. So in here, we can just make a copy of this one, and now we can just paste it over here. So that's exactly what we are doing. You see, we are getting the login user async. We pass in this model, and now if results are success, you want to return the keyword here is okay. If it is not, they want to return the bad request and still pass in the result. So this is a controller action method, and this is going to work. So let's try to run this and see. So save that, and let's first build the application first so we can see if we have any error in it. So click on Solution Explorer, now click on Build Solution, and let's wait for this solution to be done. Okay, so we have an exception here, and it's saying cannot convert from this module login module to module registration module. So let's check it up here, and that is this. So here it is register, that's login. So we have to change this. So let's clear dot login. All right, let's save this and let's do it again. So I'm gonna do solution. Now let's see the output here. So it is success now, succeeded. So now let's run this application and see. So now in here, let's try our API. So first of all, we have this user. Let's try this out and let's see, execute. And actually here we have user already exist. So that is to post. Okay, so let's go to the login. Now the login over here, let's see, we have the password and let's execute. Okay, so you can see we have the success is true, we have message and success, and you can see this is the access token that we have. You can see it has now generated this access token. Now let's try to change this email to a different thing. Let's add one. Let's execute this, and you can see from here we have invalid email or password. So as our API is working, let's also test our Blazor and see the response here. So when we check the settings here, from this if results is equal to success, you want to navigate to the home page, and if not, this is what you want to do. But first of all, with this we want to display the token. So let's copy this, and now here let's comment the navigation, and let's paste this here and display the token. So results dot instead of the message, you want to display token over here. So results. So it seems you are not finding the token here because we did not add to this model. So let's do that. In other work, you can just put all of this in a one class library. So you can have your DTOs and you can use them. So instead of creating this model from this client session and creating a model in the server session, you can just use a class library and now you hold it at once so you can share it to the client and also the server. Maybe the next time when we have to do any project, we're going to talk about that too. So let's first go to the client section, and let's try to add a token to that. That's a property. So we go to the models and response. We want to have this access token. So let's grab this, and now let's go to this client, and where we have this model response, let's include this access token as well. Okay, so now let's go back to this login page, and let's have access to the token. So pages, you go to the shared, and then you have this login.razor. And now with this, instead of displaying this just message, you want to display .access token. Let's save this, and now let's also refresh this page. So in our Blazor, we cannot type in just string as an email because we have validation against it. So let's register for a new account here, and that is test. So you have tests at gmail.com, and also let's have password as test at 123, and now test at 123. So let's see the password, they do match. Okay, now let's click on register. All right, so registration successfully done. Now let's go to the login, and now let's see. So let's pass in the same test at Gmail, and let's pass in our password as test at 123. Now we have to see our token. So click to register. No, it's supposed to be login. Now you see we have this as our token. So our Blazor is also working perfectly. Now you can now log in and now generate our token here. Now what you have to do here is, you see this token is encrypted with the user ID, user email, and also claims. So we have to decrypt this token to get the claims. If it's a user, normal user, if it is an administrator, then we can now use it in the application. So now let's implement authentication state provider. Now the core duty of this authentication state here is to check if user accessing the application is logged in or not. And also, we're going to have access to this authorized view element, which we can use to hide some concepts or some content from a user. So let's do that. But before we do that, we have to install a Blazor local storage. That is what you're going to have access to and store our token in there. You know, this token has to be kept in a place to keep it. And a Blazor local storage going to help us, or the session storage, and that's not a session, rather the local storage going to help us to store this token. So let's first install that as a NuGet package. So let's go to our Solution Explorer and click on there is a Blazor, and I right click on packages, and you can add manage NuGet packages. So let's type in for Blazor local storage and click another browse tab, and now here Blazor local storage. So this is by Crescenti. So let's click on to install this one. Aside from this, then we are going to install Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Component.Authorization, because that's going to help us to include authentication state. So let's wait for this to finish. Now let's search for this Microsoft, or even you can just pass in component.authorization. And it is for Microsoft. So let's add the Microsoft. So dot components. Okay, so that is this one. Let's install this. All right, so now we are done. When you go to Solution Explorer, and now when you click on these packages, you might see this Blazor local storage and also this component.authorization. So we have them installed. The next thing to do here is we have to register the two packages that we installed in the program.ts file. So go to program.ts, and now in here, let's add them. So we add builder.services.add Blazor local storage, and now there's a namespace that we need to add. We save that. So let's inject this local storage into the login section, login component, and that's what you want to do. So in here, let's inject it on top here. So let's do that. So iLocal storage service, and now we have to import this name. So we can actually move all of this into import.razor, or we can maintain this. We can leave them here as well. Okay, so after doing this, the next thing that we want to do here is we want to save the token into the browser's local storage. So how are you going to do this? Now you can see from this login, it has to return a message here. It is returning this result. And here, if result.success, it means it is logged in. Now you want to store this into the Blazor or the browser's local storage. So in here, we can say await, then we can have access to local storage service. And you can have access to set item async. We pass in the object as string. And now we have to set the name. This is the name that we are giving to and now this is the file. Okay, so this is a key value pair. So this is a key and this is a value. So as soon as you log in, you're going to have access to this token inside the browser's local storage. So let's save this and let's try it here. So let's open developer tool. So that is the inspect element, and you go to this application. You can see we have this local storage. So click on this. And that's the local storage. You can see from here, we have the key and then there's the value. Everything, there's nothing here. let's log in to see. So we have an email already, and now let's have a password. So test at 123. Now if I click on login, let's see what's going to happen. You can see now we have JWT token, and that's the token over here. So it has been saved to the local store as we did. So the next thing to do here is we are going to implement the authentication state provider to check if the user is authenticated or not. So in doing so, we have to create a folder here. So maybe in our application, that is a Blazor, let's create a folder. And that's going to be authentication, so state provider. So add a new folder. Now let's say this is provider. And now let's create a class as authentication, custom authentication state provider. So a new class. And now we give it a name as custom. So custom authentication state provider. Now this has to inherit from authentication state provider. So now it has this. We can now implement interface from this because this is an abstract class. So we can implement interface out of this. But before that, we can generate a constructor here. So authentication state provider control period, you could see we have to use this. And aside from that, let's implement the interface. So that's the interface here, get authentication state async. And now before that, we can create a constructor here. So CTOR, generate constructor. Now let's inject our local storage service in here. So we can do that by injecting it over here. Then we can now have this local storage service. Then we need to call this method, or we need to pass it over here. So you put it over here, and I initialize it as like this. Okay. So once you have this, we can now go ahead and grab the content from this local storage. And we're going to do that inside this authentication state provider. And that is a method that we have generated. So in here, let's clear this. And now let's set this to an async. So in here, the first thing to do here is we have to get access to our JWT token. So you can see from here that when you check our login.razor, there is a name that we are assigning to as a key. So we have to get a key, and that's what you are doing here. After that, we have to check if this is equal to null or not. If it's equal to null, then I want to return new authentication state, meaning there's no user, or that current user is not authenticated. But in case the token is found, then let's return this authentication state. And now we need to pass in the token that we have gotten into a pass claim from JWT token, or there's a method. Now this method was created by Steve Sanderson. So I'm just going there and now grab the method straight. So this is the first one. Now you can see that from here, JWT token here has 3 sections. It has a header, it has a payload, and it has a method signature. And there's also another method that we need to add, and that is a pass-base-default without padding. So these 2 methods were created by Steve Sanderson, and that is what we're going to use to decrypt that JSON token and return with its claims as well. So that's the first one, and that is the second one. So this method is all over the internet, so you can just grab it and now integrate it into your application. Okay, so now we have this, as you can see from here. Now this is splitting the token and picking the second one. The token has 3 sections, and that is the header, and it has the payload and the signature. So it is grabbing the payload. The payload comprises of the name, the property that we use inside this when logged in. So you can see we decide to set the claims to a name, email address, and ID, and etc. So that's what it is decrypting to get us the current content. Okay, so now once you're done with this, let's save this, and let's run this to generate a token. Then we can just go to JWT.io and I'll try to decrypt the token. And I think it will give us more insight on this method. So let's run this. So in here, let's try to log in so we can have access to our token, and let's pass the password. So we'll click on this. Let's go to inspect element, and now let's try to have access to the token. So by going to application, so log in. So we go to application, and now you can see we have our token here. So in our token, let's grab this token. So that is the token. We can grab that. And now let's note. So I'm going to paste it, and let's see. So the token is not all. Let's finish. Let's grab all. Okay. Now, so this is our token. So you can see that this token has 3 sections. The first one is the dot. Now you have second one over here. So this is the head, this is the payload, and now this is the signature. So this here comprises of our information from the registration section, and this is just the header, and this is the signature. So let's see. Now we are going to grab this. So let's grab this here. And now let's go to JWT.io. So JWT.io. And now let's paste in this token that we've copied. So we come here, and now let's grab this. Let's paste our JWT here. So you can see we have the username, user ID as 6. We have full name as what test, the email here, the expiry date, the issuer, and the audience. Now there's a header. So it is telling us the algorithm we use, and also the type of the encryption that we are doing. Now, when it comes to the signature, you can see we have this at the H mark SH256, and that's the encryption mode that we use to encrypt it. Okay, so this is what we are focusing over here, and that is what the Sanderson method is now trying to get. So it is splitting this. Now that is the first one, and it is using this to have access to this. I believe this is clear. So that is what we are doing in here. Okay. So after this, there's one method that we need to also specify. That is notifying authentication state change. So anytime that we called, when a user tries to authenticate himself and it gets decrypted as a token, and we have access to all the properties inside the payload, we want to reload so that the system gets aware. And we can do that by adding just as one simple method over here, Binet. So let's do that. So let's have a method as public void notifying authentication state. And just one line of code is going to help do that. So you can see here we are calling this method, and now we are passing this method over here. So we are calling a method in a method, and that's going to refresh or call this method anytime we call this method over here. So let's save that. So, you know, we have created a custom authentication state provider. So we need to create dependency injection. So let's go to program.cs file. Now in here, we have to add this authentication state provider over here. So we can do that by adding builder.services. So we can do that by saying builder.services.add-scope. Then we can now pass in this authentication state provider. And also we need to pass in the custom authentication state provider. When we are done, we need to register this. So we're going to register that by using the builder.services.add authorization core. So this is going to register the authentication state provider, and now we are creating dependency injection between the original one and the fake one. After doing this, then we have to wrap our apps, that's a routing system, inside cascading authentication state. We can do that by navigating to the app.razor, and that's where we have our routing system. So we can actually just grab this and we can cut that. And now let's wrap in with cascading authentication state provider. And now in here, we can just paste this here. So let's save that. So after doing this, you know, we have to, when you log in first time, you see we have this login page and etc. over there. So we don't want to do that. So login and register, we want to hide them based on the authentication state. So if you're not logged in, then you want to see register or login. But as soon as you're logged in, we want to see logout. And the register and the login must be hidden. So we can implement it by going to our project, and now let's navigate to the main layout. You can see we have this login and register here. So we can actually cut this and implement a new thing in there. So in here, where you have this about, you can see I have cut this register and login, and now we can implement this authorized view. So this authorized view comprises of two views, that is the authorized and not authorized. So you can have access to this authorized. So in case the user is authorized, what do you want to see? What do you want to display? In case the person is not authorized, what do you want to use? That's the not authorized. So here you want to pass in the login and a register. And now here with the authorized, as soon as the person is authorized, you want to display the name. And also, maybe the name of the email. So let's display the name as well to the user. So you can do that here. But before that, you have to create a method beneath, and that's going to allow us to get the name from this authentication state provider. That's a custom one that we created. All right, so in here we can have access to the claims here. So we can create a method as private string. It is return just a string because you want to display the name. And I display info, so you pass in the list of claims, and that is, so this is a list. We want to look through the list, and I have access to grab only the full name. Now we are checking from the claims whereby it has the type as full name. How and where did you get this full name? When you check our custom authentication state provider and also our user service from our API, from that controller, you can see from here, there's a user repo. We are adding claims over here for user ID, full name, and our email. We want to grab only the full name. You can decide to add in the email as well. So we're grabbing only the full name, and that's what we are doing here. Aside from that, we have to return the full name, and we can now call this method inside the authorized view. So when it is authorized, we want to display the name of the client. That is all. So let's save this, and now let's put it over here. So now let's grab the content here. So you call the method, you pass in the list of claims here. And now when it comes to the list of claims, it's going to look through them and search for a specific one that has the full name related to the one that we added in our user repo. And now we return the full name. So now when we save this and we run this, let's see. So let's log in. Now you can see we have even the name displayed over here because the token is found in our local storage. You can see we have the name. So we can decide to use the email. So let's see, when we go to our page here, you can decide to use the full name as email here, and I'm just going to get as the email. So let's save that, and now let's clear this off, edit it, clear this off, now save. And now let's see. We have to get the email over here. So when we try to refresh it, you must have that. Let's see. So you can see that we have the email displayed. So meaning our authentication is working perfectly. Now what left here is we have to make some few changes and now add the claims and now set attributes to the claims whereby we can specify this is the user, this is administrator, this is manager, and etc. Okay. So I'll leave this source code at the GitHub, and I'll put the link under the description. So you can just go in there and grab this. Thank you so much for watching this video, and you can subscribe to the channel for more videos. There's going to be definitely another video on this because we aren't done yet. Okay, so we're going to end here and let's wait for the next video.